Living longer, living healthier, living better than ever before. Welcome to Mountain Pacific's Healthy Living for Life, a weekly series that gives you the information, education, and expert insight you need to become an active participant in today's ever-changing healthcare climate. Here now is today's program host.
Despite ongoing research, questions remain about one of the most common neurological diseases in the world, multiple sclerosis or MS. It can strike anyone at any time. More than 2 million people worldwide live with MS. We don't know what causes it. There's no cure. Welcome to Healthy Living for Life, a show dedicated to helping you do just that. I'm your host, Sarah Medley. Today we try to understand MS better. Stay with us. Welcome back. Joining us first this morning is Heidi Kenner, who was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis or MS about 4.5 years ago. Heidi, thanks for being on our show and being so willing to share your experiences with us.
I'm glad to join you and offer any advice I can to those struggling with MS right now.
Okay. So before we talk about that important topic of MS, can you tell us about yourself? Talk about you and who are you?
Absolutely. Well, I grew up in England, although was born in Colorado, and after college went to the Marine Corps, and then after that went to seminary and am now an Episcopal priest, and I've served churches around the country, and I'm currently serving a small parish in Florida.
So you get to spend part-time in Florida and part-time in Montana.
I do, which is a wonderful life and a great blessing with my disease, actually.
I bet it is. So let's talk about the symptoms of MS. So what were some of those first symptoms?
My first really noticeable symptom in November 2013, my right arm went numb. I couldn't feel anything. And I initially thought I must have pinched a nerve in my neck when I was working out. But after it didn't resolve after a couple of weeks, I went to my primary care doctor who sent me for some x-rays and noticed something strange on my spinal cord. And he was concerned that my cancer might have come back. So we then went on to the next treatments from there. So that right arm was really my first main symptom.
So after that symptom, and then you went to the primary care physician, so what more aggressive test did the physician order and did you have done?
After the x-ray, they sent me for an MRI, and they took the images of my brain and of my cervical spine, and that showed some lesions. And with that then, they had a lumbar puncture done, which is with a hollow needle, and they take some fluid out of your spine. And at that point, my neurologist, with the symptoms and all the results of the tests, was able to confirm a diagnosis of multiple sclerosis.
So from the onset of that symptom to diagnosis, how long was that?
It was less than 2 months.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Is that typical, do you think, that short amount of time?
It doesn't seem to be, from much that I've read in other MS patients that I've talked with. MS, I think, is a very difficult disease to diagnose because so many of its symptoms look like a number of other diseases or just smaller problems. And so I think for many people it can take longer. I was very fortunate to have a primary care physician who had a number of other MS patients, and so was kind of on the lookout for that. And then a wonderful neurologist who really jumped on getting tests done so that we could get a quick diagnosis and begin appropriate treatment.
So what are you doing to manage your MS?
So my main management tool is a drug called Copaxone, and that's an injection that I do 3 times a week. And that slows the progression of the disease, essentially. Beyond that, we occasionally have to manage symptoms. Bladder infections are common, and I've had to do just management for several of those. But overall, I'm doing very, very well, and I think in part because of the quick diagnosis.
So I've read about depression being part of the diagnosis of MS and part of the symptoms. So can you talk about that? Did you experience depression?
I think mild depression for the first little bit, and sometimes depression with MS seems to be related to the actual course of the disease, and sometimes it's just a reality of getting a diagnosis of a chronic illness that you will have for the rest of your life. I think that mine was the latter, and I was very fortunate though to have lots of really good friends to talk to and to pray with, and really helped me work through that sadness of a chronic illness.
When you think back over the last 4.5 years, what's the most difficult thing that you've really had to experience or deal with?
I think for me it's been the fatigue. Fatigue is a very common symptom with MS, and it's different than just feeling a little tired. It's that just debilitating. It doesn't matter how much you slept, you're suddenly exhausted. And having been a Marine Corps officer, I kind of grew up always just being able to push through, but I can't do that any longer. And so I've had to adjust my life somewhat.
So when you think about the future, and what do you think about, what do you look forward to?
You know, my husband and I will often talk about what's in 10 years or 20 years of retirement. And sometimes my brain will go to the worst case what ifs. Well, what if I can't walk in 20 years? And so we plan, but we also know we may have to adjust. But I think more than anything, we just take each day as the gift that it is and try and live that to the fullest and not worry about all of the what ifs.
And take your naps?
Yes.
On a regular basis.
I do.
That's wonderful. Heidi, thank you so much for sharing your experiences with our audience.
Thank you, Sarah.
In a lot of ways, MS is a mysterious and frustrating disease. But what do we know about it, and who's at risk for developing it? We'll talk about that and more right after this short break. Stay with us. Welcome back. We've come a long way when it comes to the diagnosis and treatment of MS, but there's a lot about MS that still remains unknown. To talk about what we do know about MS, we have Dr. Nicole Clark, a neurologist who works with hundreds of patients with MS. Dr. Clark, thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
So what is MS?
MS is a disease of the immune system. So what happens is similar to other immune diseases or autoimmune diseases. The immune system gets confused and starts attacking your body. In the case of MS, it starts attacking the covering of nerves called the myelin. And once that covering is removed, then it can cause damage to the nerves underneath.
So how many people in the United States have MS?
There are lots of different numbers out there, somewhere around 500,000.
Wow.
A lot.
So you're treating patients in the greater Helena community. How many of those patients are there?
I see over 400 MS patients.
Wow, that's a lot.
Sure, it's a lot.
What kind of symptoms are caused by MS?
Well, MS can affect any place in your brain or in the upper part of your spinal cord. So the symptoms are based on wherever your body decides to attack. That means that it can be numbness, weakness, trouble speaking, trouble seeing, or some more subtle things like trouble with balance or slurring speech or even finding the right words.
So in our previous segment, we learned from Heidi Kenner that her symptoms began at 43. Is that pretty typical age?
For Heidi, it's a fairly typical age. Usually we think of the 20s and 30s as being the prime time to be diagnosed. The youngest patient I've diagnosed was 13, and the oldest was in their 80s. So it can happen at any time, and it can be diagnosed at any time, but usually middle of life.
Who seems more at risk for developing MS? I've heard women, more women than men.
There are about 2/3 of MS patients who are women, about 1/3 men. Also, there are some interesting factors that the further north you live and the further north you grow up, the higher the risk of MS. Also, people of Northern European descent tend to develop MS at a higher rate than other racial backgrounds.
What do these statistics say about what causes MS?
We still don't know. We've looked at lots of things. We've evaluated several different viruses that could be affecting, could trigger the immune system. We've looked for different other environmental factors, something about living further up north. One theory that is prevalent among MS physicians is that there may be something to do with a low vitamin D level. And we recommend all of our MS patients should be taking some extra vitamin D for that.
Can certain infections or viruses put you more at risk for developing MS?
Well, we don't know. We haven't found any real solid evidence of it. Certainly we've looked at some of the viruses that can live in your body. So things that, like Epstein-Barr virus, the monovirus. Once you have it in your body, it's there forever. So we've looked at this to see if there is a correlation, but we haven't found one yet.
Talk to us about the stages of MS.
Well, the stages, there are lots of different kinds of MS. Certainly not everyone, not everyone's the same, and everyone is a little bit different in the way their MS starts. Sometimes we have just a single incident. It can be just a single weakness, single episode of numbness, called a clinically isolated syndrome. The most common type is called relapsing remitting MS, and that's what about 85% of people have. And that's really where a lot of our treatments are focused on. What happens there is people will have a relapse, which is a new symptom, represents new inflammation in a place in the brain or spinal cord, followed by periods of quiet, that the disease is remitting. There are also some more aggressive forms of MS, and luckily those are less common. Secondary progressive MS happens when someone has this relapsing remitting course and then starts to have more progressive symptoms. And there's also primary progressive MS when it starts aggressive from the very beginning.
So are there things that can be done to slow progression, treatment options?
There are. It's actually a very exciting time for me to be treating my patients with MS because we do have options, and we've got some pretty good medications that can slow down these lesions and keep them from happening.
Oh, great information. Great information. So in the 30 seconds that we have left, can you think of one piece of advice you'd give someone who's experiencing what Heidi did, some numbness?
Go to your doctor. Go to your doctor, get evaluated. Our tests are very good. Sometimes we're not able to find it as quickly as we did with Heidi, but our tests are very good, and we can get you on medication and stop it from progressing.
Thank you so much, Dr. Clark.
Thank you, Sarah.
Coming up next, we'll talk about treatment options and the care people with MS can receive. Stay with us. We'll be right back. Thanks for staying with us. As we've talked about, there's no cure for MS, but there are treatments to help people living with MS manage the disease and its symptoms a little better, and there are lifestyle adjustments patients can make to help the success of those treatments. Dr. Clark is still with us as we continue our discussion on this important topic. Thanks for staying with us.
Thank you.
So in the previous segment, we were talking about treatment options. And you seemed enthused about maybe some new treatment options. So I'd like to go back and ask you to talk about that.
Sure. So MS, what I tell people when they're newly diagnosed is MS is not the diagnosis it was 20 years ago. Before we had treatment options, there really was not much to curb the disease. And we were talking about, well, when you would need to use a cane and when you might need to have a wheelchair, and a very debilitating progression. But now we have medications that for most people put a stop to it. So it becomes a disease of inconvenience and using the medications, but not a disease for most people that is going to be debilitating or shorten your life. And as the years have gone on, we have more and more options and more opportunities. You know, we heard from Heidi how she uses Copaxone, which is one of our oldest drugs and been around for a long time. And it's very safe, and we like that medicine. I have a lot of patients who are on it. But if Heidi were to have some progression and the Copaxone weren't working for her, we have lots of other options to talk about and things that are other replacements for her. So
that is really good news. So
Yes.
we talked with Heidi about her diagnosis process. Why is it so difficult to pinpoint the diagnosis of MS?
Well, because MS can affect any part of your brain or spinal cord, it can present as any number of symptoms. And sometimes it's pretty clear, and our MRIs are pretty good at telling us the information we need to know. But sometimes it just is not clear, and you have to follow up and wait 6 months and repeat the imaging tests. So occasionally it does take longer.
So it sounded like Heidi was very grateful that she got an early diagnosis. So why is that so important, that early diagnosis?
So while I'm excited about all our medications, and it gives me something great for patients, none of the medications repair damage that is already done. And that's what's important, because we can stop the progression and we can stop lesions from happening, but we can't repair the damage that has happened in the past. So the sooner we diagnose, the sooner we can put a stop to those lesions, and the better patients are going to do.
So I've heard that stress can sometimes affect MS and its relapses. Can you talk about other factors that might make it worse?
You know, certainly some people are very sensitive to emotional stressors or other physical stressors that can cause relapses and inflammation of MS. We think that vitamin D levels are also somewhat related, so we recommend that our MS patients take some vitamin D, some supplements, but also just healthy living. We know one factoid is that if people smoke, MS tends to progress 3 times faster. So it's vital for anyone who has MS to stop smoking. But we also know things like a healthy diet and exercise also help them.
So clearly those lifestyle changes are critically important.
Yes, they are.
Okay. What about MS and being a fatal disease? So is MS fatal?
It can be. Nowadays, we have enough medications, and our medications are getting to the point that it is rarely fatal and it is rarely debilitating for people who are diagnosed today. But occasionally people can have very aggressive disease that leaves them in a wheelchair and unable to care for themselves.
Let's talk about emotional issues. So how often do people have to deal with either mild depression, as Heidi talked about, or significant depression? And if they have that, where do they turn for help?
So certainly they can turn to their primary care physician or their neurologist or any of their providers. Depression in MS does happen. Memory loss in MS happens because this is a disease that is affecting your brain. So we can see personality changes. You can see memory loss, and as we heard from Heidi, some people have some depression. Just the diagnosis of a chronic disease can be very depressing.
So we probably have some viewers who either have MS or have loved ones who have MS. In the few seconds that we have remaining, can you talk about what they should do? Where should they go?
Go to your doctor.
Yeah.
There is help. Anytime they're sleeping too much or too little, eating too much or too little, distracted, not involved in activities, those could be signs of depression. And you need to take that to your doctor to talk about options.
Absolutely. Go to your doctor.
Yes.
Thank you so much. That was great. And I'd like to thank Heidi once again for sharing her experience. And thank you so much for tuning in and watching this morning. Be sure to come back next week. Until then, stay fit, stay well, and stay healthy for life with Healthy Living for Life.
Healthy Living for Life is brought to you by Mountain Pacific Quality Health. We'd love to hear from you. If you have suggestions for future programs, visit our website at mpqhf.org or call us at 406-443-4020. You can also catch us on YouTube by visiting our website and clicking on the YouTube icon. Special thanks to Fire Tower Coffee House and Roasters. Production facilities provided by Video Express Productions.